The first time I heard the bells ring at old Bethpage village restoration. There was no wind, no visitors, no scheduled demonstration. Just the sound slow, deliberate, and impossibly close echoing through buildings that were supposed to be empty after sunset. I knew then this place was not preserved. It was waiting. Watch this video to the end to uncover the truth behind old Bethpage village. And if you enjoy real American ghost stories, subscribe, like, and stay with us until the final moment. I arrived just before dusk, clipboard in hand, hired as part of a late-season documentation project. Old Bethpage village restoration was meant to be a living history museum, 19th century homes, barns, churches, all painstakingly restored to reflect early Long Island life. The public saw charm and education. I saw aging timber, peeling whitewash, and structures that groaned like tired lungs when the temperature dropped. The staff left promptly at 6, gates locked. Radios off. I was given special clearance to stay overnight. Something about capturing ambient integrity. They laughed when they handed me the key. One of them said, "If you hear footsteps, it's just the building settling." None of them met my eyes. As the sky darkened, the village changed. Lanterns along the dirt paths flickered unevenly, though their timers were modern and reliable. Shadows stretched in the wrong directions, bending around corners before the light reached them. I set up my recorder near the old schoolhouse first. That's when I noticed the footprints. Bare feet. Small. Pressed into the dust, as if someone had walked out of the past and forgotten to leave. I followed them instinctively, past the blacksmith's shop, where the forge was cold, but smelled faintly of iron, past the general store where glass jars rattled on their shelves without being touched. The footprints stopped in front of the church. The door was already open. Inside, the air was colder, dense, pressing against my ears. The pews were empty, yet every bench creaked as if weight shifted along them. I raised my flashlight, and that's when I saw her at the altar. She was translucent, but not fading, solid in her sorrow. A woman in a long gray dress, fabric frayed at the hem, floating just inches above the wooden floor. Her face was pale, stretched tight over hollow cheeks, eyes sunken but wide open. She was not looking at me. She was looking through me. Her mouth moved, soundless, repeating the same word again and again. "Stay." The bell rang, then went so loud, it shook dust from the rafters. The woman's head snapped toward me, her neck bending at an unnatural angle, bones clicking softly. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I understood something terrible. Old Bethpage wasn't restoring history. It was preserving the dead. The temperature dropped further. My breath fogged. And behind me, I heard footsteps, many of them approaching from every building at once. I turned slowly, afraid that if I moved too fast, the village itself might notice. The footsteps grew louder, no longer subtle creaks, but distinct impressions in dirt and wood-bare soles. Heavy boots, dragging heels. Lantern light flickered violently, casting overlapping shadows that did not match the shapes creating them. The woman at the altar drifted backward, her form thinning like smoke pulled by a current, but her eyes stayed fixed on me. From the church doorway, figures began to appear. A man first, broad-shouldered, wearing suspenders and a stained white shirt. His neck bore a dark rope burn, skin indented and bruised as if the pressure had never eased. His feet hovered just above the floor, toes pointed downward unnaturally. Behind him came a child in a nightgown, hair matted to her face, eyes cloudy and unfocused. She walked with short, broken steps, her ankles bent the wrong way, bones grinding softly with each movement. They were not rushing, they were gathering. I backed toward the altar, heart hammering, recorder still running in my shaking hand. The air filled with whispers overlapping, frantic, desperate, not screams. Requests, pleas layered so thick I could barely separate them. "Don't lock the door," he promised. He'd come back. They said it was safe. We never left. Woman in gray raised her arm and pointed toward the ceiling. I followed her gaze just as the church bell rang again, but this time the sound came from above me. Dust rained down, and in the rafters I saw shapes hanging their dozens of tembodies suspended by ropes, scarves, even twisted cloth. swaying gently as if rocked by a breeze that did not exist. Their faces were frozen mid-realization, eyes bulging, mouths open in silent horror. Some were dressed like farmers, others like servants, a few in Sunday clothes. One wore a ranger's uniform from decades later, proof that time had not spared anyone who stayed too long. I stumbled backward and collided with something solid. I didn't need to turn to know what it was. Cold fingers closed around my wrist, skin like damp parchment stretched over sharp bone. When I finally looked, I found myself face to face with an elderly woman whose jaw hung loose, teeth clacking softly as she tried to speak. Her eyes were milky white, but tears streamed from them continuously. "They rebuilt the walls," she whispered, voice cracking like dry wood, "but they sealed us inside." Suddenly the church doors slammed shut. Outside, I heard more movement, doors opening across the village, shutters banging, floorboards creaking as unseen occupants rose from long-forgotten beds. The walls pulsed, veins of darkness spreading through the white paint, as if the building itself were alive. The woman in gray floated closer, her face inches from mine now. Up close, I could see the rope marks around her wrists, the bruises on her throat, the dried blood staining the lace at her collar. "You came after hours," she said clearly at last. Her voice was layered. Many voices speaking through one mouth. "That means you can see us." The bell rang a third time. Louder. Closer. Final. Every ghost in the church turned toward me at once, and then, all at once, the doors began to open, every door, an old Bethpage thriller releasing. Whatever had been waiting inside them, the moment the doors opened, the village exhaled. Cold air surged through the church, carrying the smell of rot, damp earth, and old smoke. The ghosts began to move as one, drifting past me, through me, their forms overlapping like layers of fog. Each touch left a sharp ache behind, as if memory itself were clawing into my skin. I staggered forward, nearly collapsing onto the altar, while the recorder slipped from my hand and clattered uselessly on the floor. Outside, old Bethpage village was no longer silent. Figures poured from every building. From the farmhouse emerged a woman with a scorched face, her skin split and blackened, eyes melted into hollow pits. Flames still licked faintly along her dress, though nothing around her burned. She walked stiffly, goins locked, leaving scorched footprints that vanished seconds after appearing. From the barn came men with crushed chests and twisted limbs, their bodies bent at impossible angles, straw and splinters embedded in their flesh. They filled the dirt paths, standing where visitors once posed for photographs, clustering beneath lanterns that now glowed in unnatural blue. Some ghosts were translucent, barely holding shape. Others looked terrifyingly solid, as if death had forgotten to take them completely. I ran. The schoolhouse was closest. I burst inside and slammed the door, though I knew how pointless it was. Children's desks rattled violently, chalk writing appearing on the blackboard by itself. Letters scratched, deep and uneven. "Stay with us." Hands pressed through the walls, dozens of them, fingers stretching impossibly long. Nails cracked and bleeding. Faces followed, pushing through the wood grain like bodies beneath thin ice. Mouths open wide, jaws unhinging, tongues black and swollen as they screamed without sound. I backed into the corner, heart racing so hard it hurt. That's when I noticed the floor. Names had been carved into it. Hundreds of them, dates beside each one. The years spanned centuries, yet the final entry was recent. Just 5 years ago, I heard footsteps behind me. The woman in gray stood in the doorway, her form now fully solid. Her eyes were darker, deeper, like empty wells. Her skin sagged slightly, as if the effort of appearing was pulling her apart. "They bring people here to remember," she said, "but memory keeps us alive." She raised her hands, and suddenly I could see everything. Deaths layered over the village like transparent film children, dying of fever in the schoolhouse. Workers crushed during construction. A man hanging himself in the church after losing his family. Caretakers who stayed late and never left. Each restoration, each repair, each attempt to preserve history had strengthened the spirits, anchoring them deeper into the land. "You walk through us?" she continued, You take pictures. You tell stories. And every time you do, we wake up again. Her face began to change. The skin tightened, eyes bulging, tongue swelling as invisible pressure crushed her throat. Rope marks burned dark against her neck. They didn't save us, she rasped. They trapped us. The walls of the schoolhouse began to bow inward. The ghosts outside pressed closer, their faces merging into a single mass of suffering eyes, mouths, hands writhing together. The bell rang again, continuous now, deafening. I screamed and shut my eyes. When the sound stopped, the pressure vanished. The room went still. I opened my eyes. I was alone. Morning light streamed through the windows. The schoolhouse looked normal, quiet, empty, restored. My recorder lay beside me, cracked but intact. Outside, staff voices drifted across the village as gates unlocked and tourists began to arrive. As I stood on shaking legs, I noticed something carved into my wrist, deep and raw. A name. My name. I tried to convince myself it had been a stress-induced hallucination. That explanation lasted exactly 3 steps outside the schoolhouse. The village looked perfect in the morning light, but the ghosts were still there. They were faint now, like reflections on glass, yet unmistakable once you knew how to look. They stood beside tour guides, hovered behind laughing children, and leaned out of doorways as if hoping anyone might finally see them. And I could. Every ghost turned its head as I walked past. In teachers, the woman in gray stood at the altar again, her body swaying slightly as if the rope were still tight around her neck. Sunlight passed straight through her, painting the pews behind her with pale distortion. Her eyes followed me, heavy with recognition. Around her, others gathered, men with crushed skulls, women clutching phantom infants, children with fever-burned skin and hollow stares. They no longer whispered. They waited. I fled the village as soon as my shift ended, ignoring questions, leaving equipment behind. 4 weeks, I avoided sleep. When I did sleep, I dreamed of lanterns glowing blue and buildings breathing in the dark. I heard the bell every night at the same hour, slow and deliberate, echoing inside my chest. Then the marks began to appear, rope burns around my wrists, bruises blooming along my throat, dirt under my fingernails, no matter how much I scrubbed. My reflection started to lag behind my movements, smiling a fraction of a second too late. I don't remember driving there. I don't remember unlocking the gate, but the village remembered me. The buildings loomed darker than ever, lanterns already lit, paths freshly marked with footprints that matched my own. The ghosts emerged immediately, no longer hesitant. They surrounded me, their forms clearer, heavier, as if my return had strengthened them. The woman in gray stepped forward. Her face was closer to mine now than it had ever been. I could smell the damp earth in her hair, feel the cold radiating from her skin. "You stayed too long," she said gently. "Now you belong to the Restoration." Hands seized my arms, dozens of them pulling me toward the church. The bell rang overhead, joyous this time. I struggled, but my body felt wrong, lighter, thinner, as if parts of me were already fading. Inside the church, the rafters were empty. The ropes were waiting. As they tightened around my neck, I understood the truth. Old Bethpage Village Restoration doesn't preserve buildings. It preserves presence. Every story told, every photograph taken, every after-hours step breathes life into the dead and drains it from the living. When morning came, the staff found nothing unusual. Just a new name carved into the schoolhouse floor, a faint set of footprints leading nowhere, and a figure sometimes seen among the tourismen standing to still, eyes hollow, watching the exits. If you ever visit Old Bethpage Village Restoration and feel someone staring at you from behind, don't turn around. It might be me, and I'm still waiting.